When I first met Jordan, it was quite a while ago, at Geist magazine, I believe, and he gave me the manuscript that became this book. This was quite a while ago. It was so jealousy-inducing when I was reading it that when I handed it back to him, there's only like one note. Because one of the poems I didn't appreciate. But he came back with like 8 versions of that poem, which were all like infinitely better than the last. And it was that like jealousy-inducing where like I laughed nervously the entire time. And that to me is what Jordan is as a writer. He does all the things that I will probably never do. He is infinitely interesting. If I'm going to be boring into his bio, I believe he got his MFA at UBC. He is the current guest editor of Poetry's Dead magazine. That's all I had for the bio. So there's not much I can say about the book that doesn't speak for itself. It is actually, to me, one of the most beautiful poetry books I've seen in a long-ass time. You have to have it as a physical copy. It is an artifact. It is a piece of art. So purchase it, $20, or if you haven't already. I'm certain he'll sign it for you, unless he doesn't like you, which is fair. He probably did something really bad. Did I fuck this up enough for you? Yeah, okay, good. Without further ado, Jordan Abel.
Thanks, Daniel. That was awesome. I'm so happy to be here and to launch this book. It's been such a long time since I started writing it that I'm honestly just like astounded that it's even a thing. So thank you so much for coming out, and thank you for coming to the Poetry's Dead launch. Thank you for buying the book. Thank you for buying beer. It's lovely to see each and every one of you. I'm going to read a couple of poems for you from the book. This first poem is actually the title poem from The Place of Scraps. So it's called The Place of Scraps.
The people went through life, death came eventually. Death, even now, is a time for the Indians when they cannot resist, singing traditional songs of their own people, songs of the past. Some of them are so ancient that they go back to Siberia and China. There is even a refrain among the songs of the Northwest Coast which is Hayu, Hayu, Hayu. And such songs of the Eagle clan and the Wolf clan means Alice, Alice in a very Chinese language from which their ancestors had obtained them through people that have transmitted them such refrains, such dirges from ancient China, Mongolia, Siberia onto the Northwest Coast, which is a continuous territory anyway. Hanu is a dirge of the wolf, the high wolf chief of the upper Nass River. Hanu, Hanu, Hanu. It was identified by a Chinese professor as being Chinese originally, or something like it, and more remotely Hindu. It was a Buddhistic song. Imagine hearing dirge songs among the Indians of the Northwest Coast that were prehistoric Buddhist. Well, that seems to be the truth. Hanu, and I'm going to use a larger drum for this, a deeper drum. And these drums, such as this, is a skin, a moose skin stretched on a hoop of cedar, bent in a circle. It's a pretty large drum. Well, these drums are shamanistic drums, such as the natives of Siberia use in their rituals of life and death. And such drums have been transmitted to the Indians of the Northwest Coast, and they make them now everywhere in the Northwest. They are Buddhistic drums. of the natives of British Columbia, northern British Columbia. And Hanno is the dirge of the Wolf Chief, a large drum, where these drums are shamanistic drums, such as the natives of Siberia use in their rituals of life and death. And such drums can be transmitted to the Indians of northwest Russia and make them now everywhere in the northwest. They are foot-hunting drums of the natives of British Columbia, northern British Columbia. And Hanno is the dirge of the Wolf Chief, a large drum, where these drums are shamanistic drums, such as the natives of Siberia use in their rituals of life and death. Foot-hunting drum of the natives of British Columbia, northern British Columbia. And Hanno is the dirge of the Wolf Chief, a large drum, where these drums are shamanistic drums, such as the natives of Siberia use in their rituals of life and death.
Endless things in the woods that are no here. I trudged on, I rested, I caught, I gazed, I must have a place of surroundings. Translated shadows, so I stared, endless things in the woods that are no here. I trudged on, I translated, I caught, I gazed, I must have a place of surroundings. Translated shadows, stars, there are endless things in the woods. There are no poets here. I trudged on, I translated, I rested, I reckoned, I gazed, I must remember the place of surroundings. Translated shadows, there, in endless heights of the woods, there are no poets. I trudged on, translated, I rested, I gazed, I must remember the place of surroundings. Translated shadows, stars, endless heights of the woods, there are no poets. I trudged on, I translated, I rested, I came, I must remember the place of surroundings. Translated shadows, stars, an endless hike into the there are no powers here. I trudged on, translated, I rested, I caught, I gazed, I now remember the place of stress, where he fits, and endless time, the place of scraps. Thank you guys so much. That went really well. One of those things, I work with a lot of technology in my performances, and sometimes it goes terribly, just god-awful. And sometimes it goes well. So I feel like it went well. Thank you. Thank you to everyone at Talonbooks for putting together the Place of Scraps. I think it looks phenomenal. Everybody who I've talked to about it so far is really into it, and I was talking with Kevin and my Aunt Penny just out there a moment ago, and we were talking about how it's just nice to be able to look through it without even reading it, just skim the pages and see what's in there. One of the reasons why I started writing this book because I was at a time in my life where I was completely disconnected from my Nisga'a heritage, and I was very interested in learning more about myself and about where my ancestors came from. But I didn't have any access to any of my relatives or anybody from the Nisga'a Nation. And at the time, I was going to school at the University of Alberta, and I had access to these amazing libraries at the U of A. So I decided to dig up whatever I could about the Nisga'a people. And when I was in there, in the library, doing all this research, I came across a number of books. But one of the books that spoke to me the most was a book by Marius Barbeau called Talonbooks. This book is published in two volumes. And I was originally extremely interested in the book because there were so many stories, and there's so much history that seems to only be present in this book that I couldn't locate anywhere else. And all of this was pertaining to the First Nations on the Pacific Northwest coast here. And I just found it a phenomenal resource. And I was interested in learning these stories. I was interested in writing about them and talking about them. So when I first started writing The Place of Scraps, it actually was a work of historical fiction, which I'm very glad it didn't turn out to be that in the end. But that's the way it started. And then it kind of turned into, I think it turned into nonfiction from there. And then it kind of turned into lyrical poetry. And then somewhere along the way, actually I know exactly, when I was doing my MFA at UBC, I think about a month or so into my first year there, I had this this moment of like complete frustration where I had this thing that I wanted to write about, but I had no idea how to write it. And so what I started doing was like I went straight to the source material of Barbeau's book, Talonbooks, and I took entire passages of his book, put it right into InDesign, and then just started erasing pieces of Barbeau's writing. And that's kind of where like the book started. So it's been a long journey to get here, but yeah, it's been absolutely worth it. So if you get a chance to take a look at the book, totally do that. I'm going to read this poem. It's actually not from The Place of Scraps. It's a poem from my next book. It's called Engine. And this book has some really interesting, I was really interested in public domain texts after I had finished working on The Place of Scraps. And I was kind of like searching for what was out there in terms of the public domain. And has anybody heard of Project Gutenberg?
Oh yeah.
Yeah? Okay, awesome. So Project Gutenberg is it's basically like a compendium of public domain texts, and it's organized in a number of different ways. One of those ways that it can be organized is in terms of genre. So I searched through their genres, and one of the genres that appealed to me was the pulp Western novel. And I think they had 81 or 82 entire pulp Western novels freely available on Project Gutenberg. So I took all 82 of those novels and I copied them into a single Word document, which turned into, it was over 10,000 pages long, and turns out Microsoft Word stops counting at page 10,000, so I don't know how many pages it actually was. But I did that in order to search all of those books simultaneously, just using Control F. And one of the words that I searched for a number of different phrases and words, and one of the words I ended up searching for was the word engine. It was I-N-J-U-N. And I searched for that one because I was very curious about the context surrounding that particular word in pulp Western novels. And it turns out I was surprised by the context surrounding that word. So basically what I did to write this poem was I think there's 512 instances of the word engine appearing across those 10,000 pages. So I copied those 512 sentences that all contain the word engine into a separate Word document. And that document turned into only 26 pages, which is much more manageable. And basically, I printed out all of those 26 pages, and I worked with one page at a time, and I literally took some scissors and cut up each page until it was a piece of this poem. So thank you to Chelsea for letting me destroy the living room. It was a mess for a while. There's paper everywhere. This poem is called Engine. He played engine in God's country, where boys proved themselves clean, dumb beasts who could cut fire out of the whitest sand. He played English across the trail, where girls turned plum, wild garlic, and strange words through the window of night. He spoke through numb lips and breathed frontier. He heard snatches of comment going up from the riverbank. All them engines is people first, and besides for this buckskin, why we even shoot at them, and seems like a sign of warm, dead as a horse friendship, and time to peddle their eyes, to lean out and say the truth. All you engines is just white keys. Some fearful heap, some crooked swell, bent towards him and produced a pair of nickel-plated pullers, a bull winder of dirty tenderness that stiffened into that low brow ice, that dead engine game He confessed over a pitch fire, 2 yards of bright luck packed through a mangy boil, the antipathy of peaceable hills going crazy over that engine smell downwind from the storm that bucked gold and water right into a ribbon of domestics, a reserve of gas feather camps dusted straight into the big kill. No talk of rain that night, only concern for smoke where fire found a home from a knife-drop silence that some might consider just part of a dream. Driven through tent flaps, it fared into his eyes, his stained altar of ease, straight walking the tick. Faces in their blankets, trigger fingers in their pockets, one straight trail gone district gold and bad as a trace. If they had dreamed of nights, if they had eyes over fists, no free nodding Nevada in the pockets of soldiers, or grubbed up engines in the gleam of discovery. Engines in a heap, spring boiled over, lanterns buried light against day, old rifle, old trip, the doubt outlasted. Just cattle dying, a promise of appetite, of one man owned, who slanted their memories on the backs of lids, who breathed on granite without the straight, who squared their minds bearing down on grub steak, who talked the sides through call and country, who kept their dreams in some scraped town, pockets filled with knives that can't fix to a clasp, a 2-year-old, one eye closed and sideways glancing, a licked glass of jelly bordering artful territory, a partial engine tongue steady in an old man's fingers. Blankets over tender feet. If prayers were tolerable, if money shook like rattlers, trouble now up in the air, concerns over missing knives. After all, if a fellow don't shoot, no one man can change him, because a man can be anybody except little. Even snakes are more vital, even bandages wash away. Just the war path, just the all-time disgust, ringing rescue acts for the boys and engines for the nights. All misdeeds at the milk house, all heap shoots by the sagebrush. All the grub is somewhere down in the hungry bellies of drunks. All the dog cries are announced at the back door. All day for $1 mixing mineral land with the real thing. You can see it for yourself. Let's play engine and clean ourselves off the land. Same old gun-handed business served up on the hunt tracks of strangers. God must love half-caste daughters and the angry race of blue-eyed prospects struck fair taints that brought their peaceful skin unthinkingly to the summit as the heart of the morning dragged across the sky. Man must track all far-off boots and creep hazard into little squaw talk, that part of sparkling knife love that hates the trouble of rope and the letters of towns. Engines must hang straight black arrows off their shoulders and be thankful and be faithful and be trustful of silver and luck. The day kicks up like a pack of wolves on the cut. Buzzards are fine birds that are fooled by my redskin scent. No keen-spirited white flesh shaking trails in the walk light. No leveled rifle in the woods where I slept along towards the day. Back to the bloody gorge, to that mad pale-faced settler burning good fellow dead heaps in rattlesnake country. Back to the folks I call brother and sweetheart and such. I see the clear, mad stream. Bodies are made from the west. Brave Christian tribes, camps of hostile hunters learning to love, windfields of work-skin tremors chasing the scalp. Black hair forms here, I hear your dead heroes. This burden socked through the engine grass, this axe whips scars into dark faces. This half-breed grit carries us unwavering into the sledgehammer dawn, into the hollow rampage, into the flagstaff breach, with my winter confidence boiling the ambush faith. Like every fire quickened pace, the abandoned Boonville Bank, the Rose Hotel buckling with shares of white heat trapped in by the lucky bodies of Yuma, a steam-hammered play of principles and wariness, an intercourse of title and possession that breaks the fingers of the river and leaves me wild-eyed and exasperated by the mud-sprung shore. Thank you. That's a tough one to read sometimes. When I first read it, it kind of just came out in this like flurry of words that seemed to me at the time totally unstoppable. So I didn't attempt to slow them down, I just read everything. And when I composed that poem, it was over like a really short period of time, maybe only like a week or two, just actually cutting up all those pieces of paper. So I did this thing. I was at the Living Words Festival in Prince George last week, and I tried reading it really slowly so that everybody could hear what I was saying and could like linger on, you know, some of those moments. And that was such a challenge for me to not read it really quickly. And I was actually planning on reading it really slowly tonight, and that didn't happen exactly the way I thought it would. But yeah, that's a thing. So yeah, thanks for listening to that. It was awesome. You guys are great. I have one poem that I really wanted to read you. This is probably the last poem I'm going to read. It doesn't have a title exactly. It's a poem that I've read in a number of different ways. And it's section 2B from The Place of Scraps. So it's a section that I think spans a number of pages, maybe 20, 25 pages, I don't know. But it is not 25 pages full of words. There's actually very few words on each page, so yeah. But when I originally performed this poem, I read it I read it somewhere. I can't remember where exactly at this particular moment, but I went to GarageBand and I made this like recording of myself reading it, and I looped a whole bunch of sections. I burned a CD, and then I went to a dinner party, and I brought the CD with me, hoping that at some point there would be an opening in the evening where I would just be like, hey, I wrote this poem, you want to listen to it? And the people who I was with totally said yes, which I am now surprised by. At the time I was like, oh, they're totally going to let me read this, but they did. And I read it with the CD playing in the background, and it had there was a lot of timing issues that I had yet to resolve. But I think it worked out okay. And that was 2 years ago, I think, that I started performing this poem. And there's been a lot of variations on how I performed it. I think last year at this time I performed it using I basically used my iPhone's notepad and put the poem on there, and then had my iPhone read the poem to the audience, which actually worked out pretty well. The very first line of this poem is called "The Poet is Artificially Replaced," so I felt like that was fitting. But let me just delete this track off of my loop station. And I'll begin. The poet is artificially replaced, amputated by the instability of simultaneous groupings of panoptic illusion, compulsory projections of the human aesthetic, impatience of beauty. The cyclicity of these poetics is a negative feature, massive overemphasis, theory compounded on theory, original formations and interjections are met with relaxation, secondary importance. Position of classification is a struggle. The whole, the absurd whole, has itself entered into the study of poetic tropes, usually directed chiefly towards metaphor in all its assuredness. The subject then restores precisely that opposition that decodes the necessary political praxis, if and only if the structure of repression justifies the vigilant, universal, socio-synthetic dimension. But there is no duality with constructing a meta-language, and within the writing, within the represented spatial lines, there is only the act of interpretation, the concern for aesthetic. One is tempted to struggle with the fixed bond between the reader and the reading experience, but any individual, taken almost at random, would lack the most basic competence in these matters. A state of primal unity in which we are bound to be disappointed is derived from a natural analogy. Objects cannot be stopped, meaning conflicts with itself. The message is always the same. mental representations of perceived conflict and consequence, both in terms of political reflection, lacking urgency and performance of culture. But the divisions of movement and axial visibility, separated cells, and applied formations between religious, scientific, and ethical systems. Those that are directed by the body. Here, science isn't just essential, but the trumpet of legitimation. All the effects of truth converge on the crucial issues of idealism, meaning, and interpretation. All the agency of as before, the notes show us the evaporation of cultural equality, the impulse of liberty. Already the renewed disruption of knowledge spreads across the globe. There is no triumph in the sunken view. The articulation of freedom depends on our engagement with fictions of objects. His childhood of simulation was equipped with the subjective. The simplicity of these poetics is a negative feature. Mass overemphasis, theory compounded on theory, original formations and interjections of urgent realization, secondary importance. The division of classification is a struggle, the whole, the absurd cells, and finds itself entered into the study of poetic tropes, usually directed chiefly towards metaphor or the body. The subject there is now position of the codes are necessary. All the effects of truth, the structure of repression justifies the vision, and it universal all dimension. There is no duality or no short of the evaporation of culture. Here, science isn't just essential, but the trumpet of legitimation. Already there is a tribal unity which we are bound to be disappointed as derived from a natural analogy. Objects cannot be stopped, meaning the influence of itself. All the effects of this converge on the crucial issues of idealism, meaning, and interpretation. All the ages of knowledge. That is before the notes show us the evaporation of cultural ideology, the impulse of liberty, and classification is a struggle. There is no triumphation of movement. The articulation of freedom depends on our engagement with fiction. There is no duality in constructing metaphor. This child has simulation of the subjective. Subject here is now the codes are necessary. All the effects of truth, the structure of repression justifies the vision, and it universal all dimension. There is no duality or no short of the evaporation of culture. Here, science isn't just essential, but the trumpet of legitimation. Already there is a tribal unity which we are bound to be disappointed as derived from a natural analogy. Objects cannot be stopped, meaning the influence of itself. All the effects of this child verse of the Thank you guys so much. I've thrown all of my paper on the floor. I have nothing left to read. Thank you for coming. Please stick around and buy some issues.
The book itself is $20. The magazine is $5, subscription for $10. Thank you so much, everybody.